Hey, welcome. This is the full Ableton 12 2025 course in which we are going to cover Ableton from the ground up. It is for beginners, intermediates, and advanced users alike. And essentially, I will just be covering my work processes on Ableton. Without getting too much into detail about myself, I am more so inclined towards the dubstep, trap, drum and bass style of production. However, we are going to cover all sorts of topics, everything from how to make a simple beat to mix down, atmospheres, FX, sampling, resampling, gain staging, full on advanced mix and mastering. We're going to cover the whole shebang. So strap in and let's go. So to get started, one of the most useful features to Ableton is down at this bottom left, this eye here, which actually, if you just use where's my question mark? There it is. With the question mark, you can just pull up this info window and everything you need to know is in that window. Once you hover your mouse over it, it will tell you track title bar. Everything you need to know. Ableton will show and hide browser. Click here to show or hide the browser. Assignable colors, yada, yada, yada. So essentially, if you're ever confused or get stuck at any point, make sure to go click this bottom left corner, open up your info window, and you're on the road to getting information on what it is that you're covering. Now, let's go to this top left window now. And this is the browser. Ableton's new browser in 12 is just outstanding, if you ask me. Your browser won't look exactly like this, obviously, since mine's just filtered with way too many things. However, you will have this little library option and your places, which is like your user library and all that. So get quite acquainted with essentially instruments, audio effects, Max for Live, plugins, drums. This little library section is great. Also, you can essentially highlight your own favorites, racks, instruments, samples, Max for Live, whatever you want. And you can create these little libraries by, let's say you go through here. Oh, that's already selected. You like this folder. You can choose where you want to like highlight it with a tag, if you will. All right, so that's the browser. Oh, and of course, up here to search. Whatever folder it is that you're highlighted in that you want to search through. Command F will take you there, obviously, and you can start searching. There's more to the browser, but we'll get into that later. Now here's your playhead bar up here. Some new additions to Ableton 12 is the new key feature where you can have your whole project in key. Awesome feature. This is one of my favorite parts about Ableton 12. Your traditional overdub, MIDI capture, your looping, right? Command L for looping. Typical pencil, M for key, it's all there. Also, if you'd like to switch into your session view, the good old buttons here, and I believe tab, no, what was it again? I think it's Control. Here. If you're ever wondering where shortcut is, if you come up here, you go to View or Navigate, Control Bar, Session View, Arrangement View. So it's just Alt 1. There it is. Alt 1, 2, 3, 4 is where they have a bunch of the new navigation features in Live 12. And so that leaves us with we have gone around in clockwise rotation, and now we are entering the actual arrangement view, in which you have your grid. To make your grid more narrow or widen it, you can always go Command 1 or 2. Super handy way to quickly change your grid sizing. Command 3 will turn it into triplets, and Command 4 will turn it off and on. That also goes for inside of your MIDI clips. Command 1, 2 widens, and you can see that through these indicators right here at the bottom right corner of your arrangement view, and when you're in your clip, the top right around here. Also, if you left click, whatever it is that you're left clicking on will always have the shortcuts right besides the actual commands, so that you're not always hitting left click. Same thing with clicking on MIDI clips. And that is the actual arrangement view. Now, if we go ahead and click on our track, it will open up this channel view, as we're all kind of used to in Ableton. If you're brand new, there's a difference in between clicking on your channel and clicking on your MIDI clip. Now, the beautiful thing about Ableton 12 is that it allows you to have both views open at the same time. So you can have your devices and your MIDI clip open. Pretty wild. And that is controllable by these little arrows down here. Now, see, like, I can't remember what the exact option click to toggle clip and device use. So, yeah, anyway. And then over here is your mixer view. If you go to the very white little corner on it, you can have your options to have sends on it. Handy having that there. I personally like having my mixer options in the traditional sense, where if you go to view, arrangement track controls, puts them on right there. Again, every little shortcut is available when you're pulling it up your options here in like the navigate or view, playback, create, yada yada. And so that brings us over to our master. The master won't ever have a clip on it. You're recording into that, but it's just a channel view as well. These are the default racks that I use. I'll show you how to build them later. And so your record solo, I said that backwards, record and solo, turn your track on and off, your options. Now, these are actually meant to be like so. Dun, dun, dun. Play, pause, record. Typical. Down here as well, media files are missing. That's okay, just go away. Go away. Insert mark time. You know what, we can turn that away. So we'll go to settings, and instead of our settings, display and input, we can go to where was it? clean up the old cache there. This is an important one if you're hooking up any kind of MIDI controller. Your audio is the most critical one, obviously. Like you can't even play without setting some kind of audio card out. Well, the theme appearance, all this you can go through and pick it as you wish. Another big one that I like to have is your warp options. Like so, unwarped one shots, auto warp long samples off, default warp mode repitch, which we'll get into that in the clip modes in a bit, and create fades on clip edges. Oscilloscope. There we go. Finally. Okay. So down here, it will show you your insert mark. And let's say I highlight something. It pulls up the timing per second. This is handy later on for when we're talking exact measurements for mixdown and whatnot. Here's your metronome, by the way. You can choose the count in, your time signature, all the goodies over there. So now, that is the basic layout of Ableton Live 12. And we will carry on with actually making drum beats and musical ideas in the next segment of this long session. Also, all right, so to make a drum beat in Ableton Live, there's several ways of going about it. One could go ahead and take some audio samples, let's say. Take your audio, drag it right into your audio track. Take your next audio and bring it into another audio track. And Command D is to duplicate. One thing, when you're working in audio like this, it is highly advised to do your audio fades before you start duplicating a million times over. So you don't have to go back and fix a million kicks at the end of your track, right? So I would strongly suggest that. Personal option if you wish. And it's always better just to duplicate over and over so that you don't have to be dragging over. Perfect. We'll go ahead and create another audio track, Command T. Boom, perfect. You know what we'll do here actually? We'll change this to another color. If you go assign track to color clips, and our third track will also change color into something that we can just differentiate later down the line. So we'll make, it's a little too red. We'll make this purple for hats. Yeah, perfect. The same goes for the hats. Throw in here. Command 1 to make my grid shorter. If you bring your mouse right here, you can zoom in and out. Just gonna zoom in here, do my fades, right? And I'm actually gonna do a trick here where I'm gonna turn down the volume just ever so slightly here. Also, another good thing to do here is, since I don't warp my samples, it's always good to warp them now so that if I change BPM or project, my pitches won't change. Now, to give these a little bit of swing, that's just through volume. So it gives it kind of like swing as if a real drummer's playing them, right? And now, we have a drum beat. Another thing you can do here is you can just go ahead and highlight and hit Command J. And it'll consolidate everything into one clip. You could also left click and go find Consolidate here, but that's what shortcuts are for. Boom. And now these clips are usable in many ways. You can go left click, convert drums to new MIDI track. Sure, now we're working in MIDI. Okay. This just goes to show you the audio to MIDI is not perfect. Weird. I personally rather go into my drum rack instruments, let's say. Drum rack is a classic, and take an audio, Command X to cut, Command V to paste, obviously. Take an audio sample and just go drop it in there. Like if you want to play this on a MIDI clip or something like that, that also works. Now, what this does is it slots it into this drum rack, which is one of the most beautiful things known to man, and it puts it into a simpler. Now, I'm personally a sampler type, but now in Ableton 12, there's also drum sampler, which is kind of like a compromise in between the two. We'll get into simpler sampler later, but this drum sampler is also a good option because you could take your whole drum kit here that we just quickly made. Oh. Oh. And obviously for the hats, I'm not going to go ahead and take the lighter one because we can use velocities inside of MIDI clips, right? So I'm going to go ahead, put a MIDI clip in here. This one will be a little more quiet. This is where the velocity is. everything in MIDI just down here. Oh, something a little bit different with the hi-hats now. What changed? The swing. That's literally it. So people will argue that you can do more with MIDI drums. Sure. Whatever floats your boat. I like to work in both sometimes. Sometimes I am a big MIDI drum hater, mainly because it just eats my CPU. But you can do quick stuff like that, right? Anyway, going back, this is Drum Rack. It's amazing. You should use it. Zeros to disable your clips, by the way. And so that is making a beat in Ableton using both audio and MIDI. All right, so we have seen our drums inside of a MIDI rack. We've seen the drum sampler. We all know simpler. Let's take a quick look at sampler. One of the greatest samplers of all time. Here you have your sample options in which you can, choose where your playback starts. There's a loop start. We're actually going to get into all this later, specifically dedicate some time to sampler, but just to give you a quick overview, there's also the zone, pitch oscillator, settings, filter, modulation, MIDI. We're going to come back to this. So yeah, cool. Like here we have a drum rack with 3 different kinds of samplers, if you will. The drum sampler, simpler, and sampler. Additionally, you can have an in and out option here, and the sends and returns along with your macros and your variations. Your variations are basically to take a snapshot of the settings in here, and then you can stack them right in here. What's really cool about Drum Rack is that with this button here, you can put your sends and returns into this dedicated spot. When you click return tracks, it creates an audio effect slot right here, which means that you can send right from your drum rack. Where is it? Audio to. I said, oh, there's nothing to send to right now, but like, let's say. Or whatever. Then there's your rack output that you can send to. We won't quite get into that right now, but that's just to have your audio effects within your drum rack. Pretty amazing. Right now we're just looking at simple stacking. Also, if you wanted to dedicate equalizers to each specific part of this, you can just simply, where's EQ8? Drag that, oh, sorry, that'll do the whole rack. Drag that into where it's still within the rack, but if we go ahead and change to our snare, it won't have that, right? Same with our hi-hat. So it's really great, like within drum rack, you can just simply do your whole mix down inside of the rack right in here. Drum rack's one of the greatest to ever be presented to us. You have 127 slots for the spaces on what's available in terms of octaves that Ableton can do. And on top of that, you can put 127 samples into each one of these slots. So I don't know what the math is on that, but if you're working in sampler, that's this right here, but we'll get into that later. It's amazing. So anyway, back to our audio. Here I am hating on drum rack, but audio drums are still always a nice thing. Okay, so here's where I'm gonna bring forth my little mix down template that I have default on all my tracks. And if you look here, it is just simply a rack in which I have, again, my default settings. I have a 30 hertz cutoff. I have Aurora for saturation, the classic OTT. In my opinion, the only way to use compressors in Ableton, which is the Live 8 compressor. Glue compressor is okay, but for regular compressors, you got to go Live 8. Surround panner, don't really use that. I have a hash track just in case. Oscilloscope, don't really use it. Utility, always on. And actually, that should be my default setting. Loud max, great little limiter maximizer, but not really using it. And Swiss Army just to get a read on my output. Fairly light rack that I can have on every channel rate. I'm not overloading it with VSTs. I also have a low pass that can come in here just for like quick on the go. That should be off. Quick on the go edits. So actually what we're going to do here is, since I updated some of these features, I'm going to go left click here and save as default audio rack. Audio track. Boom. Yeah. But you know what? That's going to be a problem because every time... Oh no, we're good. We're good. I didn't save the audio in there. Perfect. So now I can load in another audio track, right? And then have that get rid of this. Drum rack, doing good. Paste. So essentially what's going on here is that I have nothing going on through my drum rack. We'll just turn that off for now. In here, my default's just kind of ready to do a mix on these. And I have a negative 16 decibel output gain. So I'm never messing around with my actual volumes because gain and volume are not the same thing. So these are always at 0 for me. And if we go over to my main, just for my monitoring while I'm producing, I have an output gain of 6 on here. So it's kind of boosted. And it kind of makes up for that whole minus 16. But what happens is when I go and print out my pre-master, I normally get a decent level of around, excuse me, -8 to -6 with plenty of headroom, right, for mastering. Yet it's still present. So my mastering track is a little bit more in depth, if you will. Utility. I have the glue compressor on and I don't have a limiter on here. Again, I'm using LabR to do some reading and just a bit of mid-side EQ. Almost the same thing, just kind of inverse. Let's see what my utility says. Bass mono, yeah, below 111, perfect. So when I turn this on and have all these other racks on, everything kind of levels out to as if we were at 0 Ableton, but there's no possibility of like clipping because I can always just turn this off. So now we're going to take all these tracks, Command G. We have a group, going to rename it. Oh, there we go. Drum group. Cool. Quickly do a round of renaming here. That's a big name. Cool. So now we have this drum loop. Basically got some jump up going on here. Now that hi-hat's bothering me now, so we're actually going to go into this clip mode and see how it's in warp repitch. That means if we were to slow it down or speed it up, it would be affected like vinyl. It's actually kind of great. But for instance, we're going to go into beats, choose this transient. I did like it in repitch though. And you know, another thing we can do is just simply duplicate this. Nice. We'll even duplicate it once more. You can hear the transients there. We'll bring this pitch up. So now we can actually just take all these and bring it up to like, I don't know, 0.6 part. Sort of the same hi-hat, we essentially were able to have a whole variation. And what we can do is we'll take all these, we'll group them inside of our group. Oh, you know what? This is where this drum rack is going to become really handy now. We're going to take it, come in here, mute all of our hats. We're actually going to take a click. There we go. Cool. That's it. So we're gonna come back into our drum rack. Bum, bum, bum. And we're gonna replace. This one got to be replaced. And we're gonna bring 2 clicks. And we're gonna take what is our kick snare and bring them to there. So there's actually nothing. Drum group. We're not even getting audio here. But we are getting a click. Oh, it's because it's all off, of course. There we go. You know what? I actually kind of like those 808 clicks we were looking at earlier. Just because the transient's so much shorter. I'll keep one together. And what this is going to allow us to do is to sidechain off of. Oh, I have those backwards actually. We can always go inverse, right? Ping. And that makes more sense because our kick might have a little bit and our snare might be a little tighter. Anyway, that doesn't matter because you are not going to be able to hear those. And we're going to be side chaining our hats to that. So again, live 8 compressing, always. I have one here, I can just grab live 8 compressor. Drum rack, right? Post effects, pre effects, doesn't matter. We're going to use. Are we going to use EQ this time? Maybe not this time actually. There we go. Now you can hear that side chaining happening, right? And a big part of it has to do with this decay. Nice. Great. Now you can see those tangents a little bit tighter. Nice. And so now I'm just going to quickly add a drum kit enhancer style roar to the kick. And you can right away just hear that it's just pumping it now. So we're going to actually bring this down to, let's say, 50%. Actually, let's mess around with OTT before we go ahead and do that. The thing is too, is that with our kick, -16, let's go -10. Another thing is too, kicks are notoriously bad for having presence in the 95 hertz range. I strongly say get in there, get rid of it. We'll hear it here in a second. Oh, that's so dissonant and ugly. And for our snare, actually, we'll go into our kick and we'll quickly drop the 250 range here. Yeah, that's reasonable. You can see that's just going to give space for our snare. Gain -4%. We're going to cue up a bit. Hertz. Great. And just like that, we got a quick little mix down on our drums, makes them a bit more banging. To top it all off, we can quickly just throw in this Roar drum kit enhancer. Just overall boost everything. So now let's move on to adding instruments to this. I always like to start with my drumming. Doesn't mean you have to, but if you get a solid drum line, it sets everything out for a dance floor essentially, right? So let's just start with some stock instruments. Okay, you know what? Yeah, that's great. We'll go for this kind of Reese-like bass. You know what? Actually, no, let's go. We can just mess around with analog. Nice. I like that deep bass a lot. Wow. So right off the bat, let's set our key. Now that we're working, I like to work in E minor. Wow. Fantastic.